So first of all, thank you everyone for coming. We may have some more people trickling in as we get started here, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Rabbi Feivel Rubenstein. I'm the program director for the North Louisiana Jewish Federation. It is my absolute honor and privilege to be able to introduce to all of you Kenneth Hoffman, who is the executive director of the brand new Museum of Southern Jewish Experience, which is opening up down in New Orleans. Kenneth was born in Houston and raised in Baton Rouge, so a true Southerner through and through. He spent many, many summers at Henry S. Jacobs Camp for Living Judaism over in Jackson, Mississippi, which of course we know and love and support in any way we can. He earned his bachelor's and his master's in history from Tulane University. Better you than me, Kenneth. And he spent a year studying history at the University of Bristol in Great Britain. He wrote his master's thesis on the Jewish community of Port Gibson, Mississippi, and he would be happy to send you a copy to anybody who is interested in reading his master's thesis. Kenneth has worked as a grant writer for the New Orleans Museum of Art and as the curator of education at the Louisiana State Museum. From 2004 until 2006, he served as the president of the Louisiana Association of Museums. He led the association through the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and he recently ended an 18-year tenure as director of education at the National World War II Museum, which he helped open on June 6, 2000. Kenneth, his wife, and their two daughters live in New Orleans' Black Pearl neighborhood, and we are so unbelievably fortunate to have him sharing his vast knowledge with us tonight. Tonight's agenda is going to be a presentation by Kenneth and then followed by a Q&A. So if you think of a question as he's talking, feel free to type it into the chat and we can get to those at the end of our schedule here. And Kenneth, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rabbi, for inviting me up to not only to North Louisiana, but to Dallas, Texas, and to Central Louisiana, and maybe places beyond. Oh, and Los Angeles. So it's great to see everybody tonight. I'm happy because my team, the New Orleans Saints, won their athletic competition today. But I want to know, up in North Louisiana, are you guys Saints fans or are y'all Dallas fans?
I think it's a heated topic. I'm not
Saints.
sure which answers you're going to get.
Or the Bears.
The Bears. Okay, that's fine. Well, for whoever you root for, I hope they did well today or tomorrow, if that's when they're playing. As Rabbi said, I am the executive director of the soon-to-open Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience here in New Orleans. And I'm going to spend, I was told I have 3 hours. Is that correct? Is that right? No.
I'm not going to turn you off. We'll see who stays.
So I'm going to spend just a few minutes, 20, 25 minutes, showing you some pictures, telling you about the museum, showing you some of the progress we're making. And then if anyone has any, and talking about how you can participate, some of the things that we're looking for people to do for us and with us. And then if we have any questions or if people want to schmooze about their own family history, we can certainly do that. Everyone I talk to about the museum, the conversation evolves into Jewish geography, or, you know, my grandfather had a dry goods store, and all these great stories come out of it. So I know there'll be some as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Can y'all see, just thumbs up if y'all can see my screen there. Great. There it is. There's our logo. We put the Jewish star right there in the word Southern because we are here in the South. A lot of people, believe it or not, still don't know that there are Jews in the South, even though we've been here very long time. Maybe not personally, but as a people, we've been here a very long time. Now, before we start, though, with the museum, I want to do a little quiz. When I was at the World War II Museum, I used to do a lot of pub quizzes for people, and we would have a good time answering questions about World War II. So I thought I would bring some of that fun to Southern Jewish history. So I have 3 questions for you, and I think they're super easy, but we'll see. So question number 1, Which city had the first synagogue outside of the original 13 colonies? Was it Charleston, Mobile, or New Orleans? Anybody want to unmute and tell me what they think? Nobody wants to guess? Well, the answer is New Orleans. In 1828, we had our first congregation, which later became Touro Synagogue. Of course, Charleston was in the original 13 colonies. Mobile, Alabama has a very old Jewish community also, but didn't have a congregation as early as New Orleans. Question number 2. Which sweet treats trace their kosher roots back to Savannah, Georgia? Is it Girl Scout cookies, Goo Goo clusters, or pecan pralines?
Girl Scout cookies.
Girl Scout cookies is the answer.
Am I the only one that doesn't know what a Goo Goo cluster is?
Well, you haven't been here long enough, but do you know what an RC Cola is?
Sure.
You know what a moon pie is?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're well on your way.
All right, go.
It's okay. You'll find out about Goo Goo clusters. So the Girl Scouts were founded in Savannah, Georgia, and when they started selling cookies for fundraisers, they went to the best baker in town. It was Gottlieb's, and Gottlieb's was a kosher bakery. And so the cookies all started out being kosher, and to this day, when they introduce a new kind of cookie, they do their best to make sure that they are kosher cookies. All right, and the last question is, which African-American musician was taken in by a Jewish family at age 7 and given his first instrument? Was it Jelly Roll Morton, Louis Armstrong, or Buddy Bolden?
Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong.
Indeed, it was Louis Armstrong, taken in by the Karnofskys, a family of Lithuanian immigrants. And they helped raise him for a few years. And for the rest of his life, Louis Armstrong wore a Jewish star necklace in memory of the kindness that this Jewish family showed him when he was very young. So these questions are fun just because it kind of gives you an introduction to how Jewish life and culture has been woven into the fabric of the South in sometimes in very surprising ways for a very long time. So let's talk about what the South is, because to different people, it's a different thing. For us, the South is Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And of course, where the museum is in New Orleans. Now, we've had people say, well, y'all should really include Maryland because that was a real southern state, or y'all should include Missouri, or why are you including Oklahoma, or why are you including South Florida when everyone from there is from the Northeast, or lots of different questions. All very good questions. We don't care. These are the 13 states that we have chosen to call the South that we are interpreting and exploring. Now, many of you, since Jacob's Camp was mentioned, many of you might be asking or thinking, is this a new museum? It seems like I've heard of this museum before, and that is because this is not really a brand new museum. It was originally founded at Jacob's Camp in Mississippi. And the story is that in the 1980s, a lot of small town Jewish communities were on the verge of totally disappearing. And people would call up the camp, in particular the camp director, and say, we're the last Jewish family in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, or we're selling the synagogue building in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, because we haven't had a rabbi in 30 years and there's no one else here. What do we do with the Torahs? What do we do with the all of the records from the synagogue? We don't want to throw that stuff away. So the camp decided to become a repository for these artifacts. And then they decided, well, we'll build a little museum right here on the camp grounds. And it was great for the summer campers because they could learn about their heritage and their history. At the time, it was one of only 2 air-conditioned buildings at the camp. And so you can imagine Mississippi summer, pretty hot. Kids were, usually thrilled to go to the museum. However, it was very inaccessible to the general public. It was very hard for anyone else to see it. And so it didn't get a lot of visitors. 2012, they closed the museum. They put all the artifacts in storage, and they set out looking for a new home. And they looked at different cities, and they picked New Orleans. And they came and they found me. I was working at the World War II Museum. And because I had a history with Jacob's Camp, and in graduate school, I had written about Southern Jewish history, it seemed like a good match for me to help with this project. So here's a picture of me. I had hair, then I had wet hair. Now I have no hair, but I'm still involved in the Southern Jewish experience. This is our building today in New Orleans. We don't own it. We're doing a long-term lease on part of the building. We have a 15-year lease with 2 5-year options to renew. So that's 25 years. I hope to be long retired by the time our lease is up. However, working in a museum means I probably won't be. And we don't have the whole building. What we have is the ground floor, half of the second floor, and over the next year, we have an option to grab half of the third floor, which I covet. Even though we're not supposed to covet, I covet the second half, or the half of the third floor, because if we have more room, we can do more programming, we can do more exhibits, that kind of thing. So we're thinking about finding someone who wants to see their name on a floor of the museum. Now, where we are, if y'all have been to New Orleans, I was up on the roof and I took a picture the other day, and this kind of shows you where we're located. We're very close to the World War II Museum, about 2 blocks, but there are other museums in the neighborhood too, like the Ogden Museum of Southern Art and the Contemporary Art Center. Behind me, when I was taking this picture, a few blocks, is the Southern Food and Beverage Museum, which is a really fun place. So we're in a great neighborhood. The streetcar comes right by the museum. New Orleans has a very historic streetcar. So it's great for tourists. It's great for locals to be able to come to the museum. And I'm sure I'll be eating lots of really bad food from that Exxon station across the street. I'm gonna have to watch that because that's not good for me. So the building is a historic building in that it's old. Nothing really historic happened there. It was a Goodyear tire depot, but it is over 100 years old. And as it was being renovated for our space, we took great pains to preserve the exposed brick and the exposed rafters. So as you're going through our historical exhibits, you're also going to get a sense that you're walking through an old place. So it's a really neat space that we have to offer. This slide is hard to get your head around. This is a floor plan of the ground floor. So I'm just going to walk you through very briefly. Don't worry about if you can't read it because it's too small. But you enter through a lobby, which is also our museum store. You get your coffee mugs and your T-shirts and your books and things like that, and get your ticket. This is also where our founders wall will be, folks who have donated to help us open up. Then you go into a small orientation theater and watch a 7-minute film, which we're currently making right now, and it's going to be a lot of fun. to give you a sense of what you're about to experience. What is this Southern Jewish experience we're talking about? Gallery 1 is called From Immigrants to Southerners, and it starts with the very first Jews who came to the South, mostly to Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina, New Orleans, Louisiana, Norfolk, Virginia, those kind of places. We talk about Sephardic immigration. We talk about Ashkenazic immigration. We talk about Galveston. Did y'all know that between 1907 and 1914, 10,000 Jews, Eastern European Jews, were brought through the port of Galveston? And this was an effort to alleviate some of the overcrowding that was happening up in New York. So as a matter of fact, just last week, we got a beautiful steamer trunk from a donor whose great-grandfather came through Galveston using this trunk. So we're really excited. We're going to be exhibiting that. We talk in this Gallery 1 about race and slavery and the Civil War, because that's a major part of Southern history, and it's a part of Jewish history as well. Some of that history is nothing to be proud of, but it's still history that needs to be explored and understood for the lessons that it can teach us. We have a great peddler's cart. So a lot of Jews in the South started as peddlers and then moved on to become petty merchants. So we have a mock-up of a dry goods store here with a great cash register from Galante's in Lake Providence, Louisiana. You guys ever heard of Lake Providence, Louisiana? It's over on the eastern side of Louisiana. We have this, it's a 1916 cash register. Beautiful, beautiful cash register. Then we talk about some of the anti-Semitism. The story of Jews in the South is on measure positive. It's a positive story, one that people may not expect. Immigrants from a different background coming to the Bible Belt, and yet fitting in, because as merchants, they were welcomed by predominantly the farmers. And so they needed those merchants. So things generally went well. And in this exhibit, we talk about all the almost 200 towns and cities who elected Jews as mayors over the 19th and 20th centuries. But there were elements of anti-Semitism, things like the Leo Frank case, the young man who was lynched in 1915 after he had been convicted of murdering a young girl. And so we talk about the good and the bad. And then finally up here, we talk about building Jewish communities. What is the first thing that Jews do when they move into a new place? Is it build a synagogue?
Military.
Not build a synagogue, because you can have your services in somebody's room or upstairs at the Oddfellows Hall or the Masons Hall. The first thing you do is purchase land for a cemetery, because you have to take care of those Jews who have died. And so we talk about cemeteries. Sometimes that's all that's left of some of the smaller towns in the South, is the old Jewish cemetery. Moving on to Gallery 2, it's a beautiful 4-story high atrium gallery, and it's called the Foundations of Judaism. And it's not chronological. It is an exploration of what Judaism is. When the museum was at Jacob's Camp, hardly anyone who wasn't Jewish ever went to it. Now that we're in New Orleans, where we get 18 million tourists a year, we want a lot of people who aren't Jewish coming to the museum. And this may be the first time they're introduced to what Judaism is. What are the beliefs? What are the values? What are the holidays and the life cycle events? And so we're going to explore all of those things in this gallery. We're going to do it with, we say, with a Southern accent, meaning that all the artifacts in there come from the South. So Passover is the annual celebration of the Exodus from Egypt. It is celebrated with a ceremonial meal called a Seder. Here is a Seder plate owned by, the Cohens in Krotz Springs, Louisiana in the 1890s. So we will use things from the South to talk about what Judaism is. Very exciting. 20th century, we talk about Zionism, we talk about the Holocaust, not so much what happened in the Holocaust, because we're not a Holocaust museum. We talk about how Southern Jews reacted to the Holocaust, their efforts to get family members out, their efforts to integrate Holocaust survivors into their community after the war. So, and we have some wonderful oral histories of Holocaust survivors talking about what it was like to come to the South and create a new life. We also have a gallery about civil rights and activism. And again, this has some wonderful stories for us all to be very proud of rabbis standing up and doing the right thing. And then it has some stories of folks standing aside, not standing up, but standing aside, mostly out of fear of making waves, out of fear of having the temple bombed or the rabbi's house bombed, which happened in Jackson, and it happened in Meridian, and it happened in Atlanta. And so we talk about those stories, and we have some great artifacts in there. And then finally, we have an opportunity for people to explore their own state. So, and I'm going to show you in a minute. Oh, and then you exit through the gift shop, of course. These are some renderings that our exhibit designers have provided for us. This is not what everything will eventually look like, because renderings are never what they eventually look like. This is our theater. This is part of Gallery 1 with the immigrant story and the colonial story, the Revolutionary War story. Jews were involved in the revolution. This is one of our timelines that takes people from 1654 all the way to 1924. So this is that first gallery. Here's some of our merchant artifacts. I mentioned the peddler's cart. There it is. I mentioned the cash register from Galantes. There it is. Some other wonderful artifacts. For those of you in Texas, have you heard of the Sanger brothers? The Sanger brothers had stores throughout Texas, and this metal, this little piece of greenish metal, is a citizenship award for a student in one of their schools. They started their own schools for their workers to be able to continue their education and have their children be educated as well. And we have some wonderful vintage postcards from Jewish-owned department stores. You start as a peddler, the next generation has a dry goods store, maybe the third or fourth generation is Neiman Marcus or Bon Marché or Loverman's or Rich's in Atlanta. So there are many department stores in the South that were founded and run by Jews. I mentioned slavery and the Civil War. Jews fought in the Confederacy. Who knows who that man is on the $2 Confederate note? Anybody? That's Judah P. Benjamin. He was a Louisiana senator. And when Louisiana seceded, he became eventually the Secretary of State for the Confederacy. And he was on their money. Well, he was on the $2 bill. Wasn't the highest denomination they had, but still, that's quite something. And then you can see the newspaper advertisements that some Jews put in the paper about owning slaves or looking for runaway slaves. So these are parts of the story that we're not that proud of, but they need to be told and understood in the context of their time. Here's a rendering of Gallery 2, the Foundations of Judaism, and hanging from the ceiling are going to be, it shows here pictures of synagogues, but what it's really going to be is we've sourced stained glass windows from 50 different Southern synagogues, and we've reproduced them so that they can be hung up there and not have to be removed from the synagogues. So there'll be 50 stained glass windows from 50 different shuls or temples. It'll really be beautiful. Gallery 3, 20th century, start a new timeline. We talk about Zionism. We talk about the Holocaust survivors that lived in the South. These two pictures are specifically of Holocaust survivors in New Orleans. They started a social club called the New Americans Club. Many cities in the South and throughout the country had New Americans clubs made up of Holocaust survivors. This is where we'll have our, we have a interactive screen for listening to oral histories. Here is our civil rights and activism area. On the left is Perry Nussbaum from Jackson, Mississippi. Perry was a very vocal proponent of civil rights, somewhat to the chagrin of his congregation, because his temple and his house were dynamited by the KKK. On the left is Rabbi Kahana from Houston, who went to Selma and marched with other clergy in support of the civil rights movement. So we have some wonderful artifacts there as well, and oral histories. Some of my favorite items in the museum have to do with popular culture and how Jews have fit into the everyday culture of Southern life. So I have here in the middle a parade throw. This is a bagel. It's a real bagel. It's painted gold. It's shellacked, so it will live forever. Made by the Crew de Jew, which is one of two Jewish Mardi Gras crews, or Mardi Gras clubs. They call them crews down here. So Mardi Gras is a Catholic and a Christian holiday. And for many years, for decades, Jews weren't even allowed to be in some of these crews. But now, the Jews march proudly and throw golden bagels to the parade watchers. So it's a wonderful example of the Southern Jewish experience. Driving Miss Daisy, things like Kinky Friedman. These are some of the ways that people have encountered Jews in the South through popular culture. So we talk about that as well. And this proclamation on the left is just one of my favorite things. It's from, I think it's from what, 1953, and Mrs. Ray Stockner has died in Lake Providence, Louisiana. And the mayor has put out this proclamation saying that all the stores in town are going to close during the funeral in honor of this woman and her legacy, and she was such a great citizen. So it tells you something about the integration of Jews into Southern communities and Southern life. Here's our state-by-state experience. So here there are 3 different screens for you to sit down at and start touching the screen. You pick Tennessee, you pick Oklahoma, you pick South Carolina, and then you explore the Jewish history of that state. So if you didn't see a story or something from your state beforehand, now you're going to get to sit down and do a deeper dive. The 2 screens on the outside, you can dive even deeper because we are linking to the Encyclopedia of Southern Jewish Communities, which has extensive longer articles about different cities, different towns, different states, and the Jewish communities there. So here, if you push Louisiana on the Encyclopedia of Southern Jewish Communities, these are the cities that have been, that there are articles written about. So you can see it's got some pretty extensive stuff on it. Finally, we have a great interactive exhibit. It's called Stitching Together Our Communities, and it's based on this quilt, which is in Gallery 1. And it's a quilt that was made by the Jewish Ladies Sewing Circle in Canton, Mississippi. They made it to raffle off to raise money to build a synagogue. So it's a wonderful symbol of a community coming together, all bringing a piece of themselves to put together to create something beautiful and crazy and unique to perpetuate and strengthen the Jewish community. So great symbolism there. What we're going to let people do is sit down at this table and electronically create their own quilt square by choosing different fabrics that represent different things to them, putting patches, little electronic patches on their quilt square that also represent their lives and their interests and their beliefs. And then when they've completed their quilt square, they can move it into the center of the table where it gets added with everyone else sitting around the table with their quilt square. And again, you create something beautiful and unexpected and crazy maybe, but people are adding something of themselves to their community. This is why this museum is important, not only for Jews, but for everybody, because we're telling some universal lessons and values about diversity, about how important it is for everyone to be a part of the community and to come together. And when that happens, some wonderful things happen. And that's what happened with Southern Jews when they came, or Jews when they came to the South. The half of the second floor, it's very simple, changing exhibit gallery, a classroom, and our offices. We do have a great, one other thing in our lobby is our Mezuzah Society exhibit. The Mezuzah Society is a membership level. Well, it's not really a membership level because you only have to join it once. You don't have to do it every year. But it's a donor level. We send out a beautiful glass mezuzah that's been made here in town to members, and we ask them to send back a mezuzah of their liking to us. It can be an old mezuzah, it can be a brand new mezuzah, and we're going to put all these mezuzot on in this exhibit together, and it's going to, we have several hundred people already in the Mezuzah Society, and it's going to show that yes, we want you to write us a check because we need to keep the lights on, but we also want you to be in the museum yourself. How many museums can you say, yeah, that museum, I have something of mine in that museum? This way, there's going to be a piece of each person in the museum. You're going to get to dedicate your mezuzah to, you know, your community or your family or your grandparents or whatever. So we're very excited about the Mezuzah Society. The last thing is, if you don't get our newsletter, it's called the Southern Schmooze. I would love for you to sign up for it, and you get to find out when the museum's going to open. You get to find out what kind of programming we're doing. We just did a program this week, 3 days ago, on the Jewish Orphans Home in New Orleans, and we had 300 people on the Zoom call, and it was a really great program. So, so if you want to hear about the museum and you want to follow our progress, you should sign up for the newsletter. And my email is kenneth@msje.org. If you have stories to tell, if you have artifacts to donate, or you're considering donating them, or if you want to know how to take care of your own stuff, send me an email and we'll chat about it. So that is my story. And I'd love to answer any questions that you guys have, um, and have a conversation about the museum. Anybody?
Kenneth, I did write down a few questions that were written in the chat here. I'll just share a few. And then
Sure.
if other people still have questions after we get through some of these, you can just unmute yourselves at that point and ask. But let's start here. There's a question about whether or not the museum will have docent-led tours or if it's all self-guided.
That's a great question. When I was at the World War II Museum, my department was in charge of recruiting and training the docents. And I love docents. I love the people that give their time and energy and heart to sharing what a museum has. So my guess is that when we have field trips coming through, we will have docents. For the average visitor, I'm not sure if we're going to have docents or if we're going to have just gallery attendants, who kind of stand in different places to answer questions. I just haven't worked that out yet, but it's a good question. And students will have docents, definitely.
Wonderful. There was another question here. You spoke a little bit about having that space to build the quilt and to look up histories in that database that you mentioned. Is there any way for people to share their stories in a more permanent way? How would someone donate stuff or their information, et cetera, to the museum?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because we really do want people to feel like this is their museum and be able to contribute things. And so we are coming up with some very innovative electronic ways for people. Right now on our website, we have a button that says share. It's very simple. You click share, you get 4 choices. One is I am Jewish and I'm from the South. One is I am Jewish and I'm not from the South. One is I'm not Jewish, but I'm from the South. And one is I'm not Jewish and I'm not from the South. So you click one of those, and then there's just an open text box, and you can share your whatever story you want. So a lot of people communicate with us through that, to let us just know who they are, and they're excited to share their information. So that's the gathering. It's easy to gather. The harder part is to curate and then make available and to put that into a way that's digestible and understandable by people. So we have a space in the museum that is not yet designed. It's in Gallery 3. It's toward the end. It's on a wall. And we're investigating various kinds of electronic interfaces for people to not only add some of their stories, but then have other people be able to enjoy them. So I know that was a very vague answer, but it's in our minds.
Sounds like it's something you have plans for, but figuring out exactly
Yes,
how
we
that
just have to
works.
figure out exactly. You got it.
Wonderful. That's great. What's the relationship between this museum and the ISJL? I know that a lot of the the map that you put up is also on the ISJL website, et cetera.
Right. So I wish there were I'll do this as simply as I can. First was the Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience. In the year 2000, they created the Institute of Southern Jewish Life in Jackson. Jackson is about 40 minutes outside of where the camp is. And the Institute does things like it sends out student rabbis to communities that don't have rabbis. They train Jewish educators in a curriculum for religious school. They do some public programming, and they had the museum. The museum became a department of ISJL, the Institute of Southern Jewish Life. When the board decided to restart the museum and re-envision the museum in New Orleans, it was decided to separate the museum from the Institute for all kinds of different reasons, for business reasons, for fundraising reasons, for getting a fresh start reasons. So we are our own 501c3 nonprofit entity. We are incorporated in the state of Louisiana. So we have no official connection anymore to the ISJL. However, there's all kinds of unofficial connections. We're great friends. Their historian, Dr. Josh Parshall, is one of the historians on our historical advisory committee. We're already talking about some collaborative programming to work on together. So we're still all in the same business, but we're not in business.
I appreciate that. That was a nice overview to really give us a broader picture of how that's all fits together. Great. There was a question here that just came in asking about who are some of your major funders, who's been really some of your bigger supporters.
Sure. Great question. So I'll say, first of all, on our website, if you click support, then you just kind of scroll up on the page. There's an Our Donors button. And if you click Our Donors, you see everyone who's donated to the museum. And the first people you see are what we call the founding donors. So these are the folks that will be on the wall. You know, when you walk into a museum and you see people's names. But everyone, and we don't put actual amounts or anything, but everyone who has given, if I've kept it up, sometimes I get behind. Everyone is listed. I mean, someone who gives us $18 will be listed on that page. So if you go to that page, you can see that. But I will say we have received support from all 13 states, from New York, from California, from Chicago, Denver, St. Louis, Massachusetts, Phoenix, Arizona. We've gotten 2 Canadian donations, so we're international. We find that a lot of expats, Southerners who now live outside the South, but remember their upbringing fondly, want to support us. So, it's truly a labor of love and an effort of love, and people from all over the country are supporting us. But you can see the actual names if you go to the website.
Wonderful. I love that you're international now. That's great. You can always count on Canada to help us be international.
I know some people in England, and I keep saying, look, just send me $10, so that I can say, hey, we're
across the pond.
That's right. Haven't done it yet.
There was a question about the Mezuzah project that you have there, whether those Mezuzot are actually going to have scrolls inside them.
No, because they're not going to be placed in the proper placement in a door frame, leading into a room. They're going to be all put together sort of it's almost like an art installation. So they have symbolic meaning that, of what they are. And there's going to be a text panel next to it explaining what a mezuzah is and what these mezuzot are. And there's going to be a little iPad, and you can search for yours and see who it's dedicated to. But they're not serving as ritual objects in this case.
Beautiful. I can only imagine how gorgeous that is going to be when that's.
I hope so. I hope it's going to be gorgeous. We'll see.
The last question.
So I said we have about almost 200 people in the Mezuzah Society that we've sent mezuzahs out to, and then we have instructions for how to send one back to us, and it has to be able to fit within this box. Don't send us, something giant, because and I've gotten about 30 back so far. It's hard to get people to, get to the post office, but it's going to happen. We're going to get the rest of them, I'm sure.
I love that. Wonderful. The last question that I have written down here from one of our participants, though I want to encourage anybody, if you've got more questions, feel free to keep them coming. But the last one that I have written down here is, are there plans for there to be any kind of restaurant in the museum? And then I want to add, if so, kosher?
No and no.
Ah.
Unfortunately, I would love to. I mean, we just don't have the room. We don't have the room. A restaurant also is a whole other level of, permits and all that kind of stuff. A very sad thing happened this past week in New Orleans, which is Casablanca Restaurant, which was, I think, now the only kosher restaurant in New Orleans, closed. So I don't know I mean, there's still Kosher Cajun Deli, but Casablanca used to cater a lot of events for the folks at Chabad or the folks at Beth Israel, or just anyone who wanted kosher food. And the pandemic just hurt them so bad that they closed. So I don't know what's going to happen with kosher food in New Orleans. If one of y'all wants to come down and open something up, I'll eat there.
It's outside my wheelhouse, but I'm sure there's somebody watching that's that might be.
I know someone watching.
So.
They have kids in New Orleans. Perfect.
Shout out to the Agudath Achim board president over there.
Yeah, really. Well, does anybody else have anything to share?
We'll open the floor here, so feel free. You're all muted at the moment, but you can just hit that little unmute button if you've got anything you'd like to
This is
add.
Aubrey Lurie speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry we were late. I had great trouble signing in, as I seem to have with every Zoom presentation. But anyway, my question, huh?
You sound British. Are you British?
No, but you're not too wrong. But
Not so far off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Durham, Africa.
He's South African.
South Africans, yeah. Like my cousin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is, are you connected with any other Jewish organizations in New Orleans, for example, the Holocaust Memorial, or whatever there is for Holocaust? And what about the, I suppose, the World War II Museum, because it's so famous? So, I mean,
He's not connected.
you're not connected with, I'm sure, the World War II Museum, but what about the Holocaust and any other possibilities of Jewish identity?
Sure. Great question. So we already, even though we're not open yet, we already have relationships with various agencies and institutions. All of these are informal at this point. With Tulane University's Jewish Studies program, we utilize those students as interns, giving them sort of real life museum experience. I am on the board of directors of the Council of American Jewish Museums. And so those museums, which are all over the country, oftentimes collaborate on programming or share exhibits. And since we're not open yet, we haven't done that. But once we open, then we'll have an opportunity to collaborate on programming exhibits with over 40 other museums. New Orleans doesn't have a Holocaust museum. We do have a Holocaust memorial, which is just a public space by the river. And we've been supported by the Jewish Federation and the Jewish Endowment Fund, but we're not affiliated with those groups. We don't get any funding from those groups necessarily. Now, right before I started, someone commented on my nice bookshelf behind me. I am sitting in the library of Temple Sinai, because Temple Sinai, until we get internet set up in my museum, I have an office at Temple Sinai. So they let me squat in their library, which is very nice of them, and I appreciate it. But that's just sort of a friendship arrangement. We're not actually part of any of the shuls or synagogues here in New Orleans.
Yeah, one other question. After the floods, our synagogue in Shreveport hosted some Torahs for, well, I don't know, bat mitzvah or something. There was a Torah that belonged to a congregation in New Orleans. I wonder what happened to that. Rabbis, do you know?
Just private.
So I don't know. I know that Beth Israel, the one of the Orthodox shuls here, was heavily damaged and flooded, and the Torahs there's some great pictures of the Torahs being carried out with people in waist-high water, but they were damaged to a point that they're no longer kosher. So those Torahs did not survive. The Uptown, there's a part of New Orleans called Uptown where the Reform synagogues are. They did not flood and did not have damage. So I'm not sure which Torahs you're referring to, but everyone's back up on their feet now. Of course, that was 2005, so that was quite a while ago.
Right. A number of years ago, we had a grandchild born in New Orleans, and we had for his bris. It was catered by the restaurant, I think, that you mentioned had closed down. Is that the one? So that's rather sad.
It is, and maybe someone will come and rescue it or open something up new. We'll just see. It's a tough business climate now, as you know. I don't have to say that, but we'll see what happens in the future.
Thank you. Thanks for your answer.
Great questions. There were a couple more that popped up here in the chat while you were speaking, Kenneth. The first is if the museum will have any space for traveling exhibits. I'm not sure if that question was space to bring in or if you're going to be sending out, but both.
Right. So on the second floor, we have a special exhibit gallery, and that's where we can either create our own exhibits on special topics, or we can borrow exhibits from other institutions to bring in for 3, 4, 5, 6 months at a time, or a combination. Bring in another exhibit, but modify it with some of our artifacts and some of our materials. So, and that is a great way for us to explore topics and stories in more detail that we don't have room for in our more permanent exhibits on the first floor. So for instance, the Leo Frank story gets a panel. There's a panel and there's words and there's pictures, and that's it. The Leo Frank story could use an entire exhibit. Every one of our stories could use an entire exhibit that we just don't have room for. So as the months and the years go by, we'll have opportunities to create and exhibit more in-depth stories from not only of Southern Jewish history, but we may bring in exhibits about other minority groups in the South or other Jewish geographical groups. There's a great Jewish museum in Oregon that talks about the Jews of the Pacific Northwest. So who knows, after a few years of Southern Jewish exhibits, we might want to bring in an exhibit about the Jews of the Pacific Northwest and their unique history, or the Chinese Americans in the Mississippi Delta and their experience in the South. Because we're trying to show that there is much more uniqueness and much more many interesting stories that people just don't know about America. We're an American story at its roots, and we want to make sure that we are part of telling that larger story.
Wonderful. Thank you. So another couple questions that came in here. I know there in our community is the family of one Rabbi Mantenband, who I know is big in the civil rights movement of the South. Did you mention his name before during your presentation, or?
I have not mentioned his name. Mantenband in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, among other places that he served. And I was up in Hattiesburg not too long ago. I guess it was long ago because it was before COVID. At a Friday night service, they had a potluck afterwards, and I made a presentation on the museum, and on the walls of their social hall, they have some great artifacts about the history of their congregation and their community, along with a lot of Charles Mantuban's things. And it reminds me that another valuable service that the Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience can provide is to help communities preserve their own history. The first thing I say when people call me up or email me and say, I've got so-and-so, I've got a scrapbook, do you want it? Or I've got all these photographs of my family, do you want it? The first thing I say is, don't you want it? And then people often say, well, my kids don't care. And I say, they don't care now, but they will care. And it is each of our own responsibilities to tell our own family story. We can't count on a museum to tell our family story. There's too many families out there, and the museum can't tell. I used to do this a lot at the World War II Museum. I would say, look, we're not going to be able to tell your grandfather's story unless your grandfather was Patton or something like that, but I can help you tell the story yourself. We would do all sorts of workshops on how to preserve your photographs and how to do an oral history, and how to frame things properly and store things properly. So when I saw this exhibit on the wall in Hattiesburg, it made me very proud of them for caring enough about their own history to preserve it themselves. So we also have a lot in our archive from Charles Mantuban. We have about 5 big boxes of his papers.
Wow, amazing. I know that I'm sure both congregations here in Shreveport, I'm sure the congregation over in Monroe would love that kind of support. I think I can envision some really amazing partnerships coming out of that. What a beautiful idea. I think I'll just close with this last question here, which I promise you is not coming from me. It's written right here in the chat again, which is, when is the museum supposed to open?
I'm surprised it took this long to get to this question. So when is the museum supposed to open? This past October. So at the beginning of 2020, the idea was we were going to open in October. And then, of course, March came and COVID and things shut down. Supply chains were interrupted. The construction crew at the museum had to be quarantined for, just all sorts of things. So we delayed the opening, and we started saying the first quarter of 2021. And the first quarter is January, February, or March, right? 3 months. And so we are now looking at late March, maybe April, but you didn't hear that here because it's not official. It will be official. Obviously, before we open, we have to announce it, and there'll be press and things like that. We probably won't have a grand opening with events because of the pandemic. We'll put that off maybe until the fall. So we're hoping to definitely this spring. How about that for a short answer? This spring.
Wonderful.
If you sign up for the newsletter, then you will hear all the latest that we have to offer, or follow us on Facebook if that's your thing.
Amazing. Wonderful. I know I'm impressed that you were able to say anything, quite frankly, to that question. I know how difficult it is to make declarative statements about the future right now. We're
already paying rent on our building, and so it would behoove us to open the doors and you sell a few tickets or a few coffee mugs.
Did I see a hand over there? Was that another question?
Yes.
Go for it.
It's not a question, it's a comment to tell everybody that the newsletter is wonderful. Everybody who's on this call should subscribe to the newsletter because it has interesting information every single month. Kenneth, I love it.
Well, thank you. I enjoy writing it.
What a great way to end on that kind of an endorsement for the newsletter. Just absolutely wonderful. Thank you again to everyone who showed up for this event. I know that Federation is really hoping. I saw some comments about the men's club, also excited about possibly taking a trip down there. Once it is safe enough to actually have people on a bus together and touring together and traveling together, I know we would love to send some people down from Shreveport to check out the new museum. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to everybody's question there. Feel free to type it in the chat here. Maybe we can stay after if Kenneth has a few moments. But I want to give a chance for anybody who has to go to be respectful of everyone's time. But Kenneth, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us here in Shreveport and Dallas and Los Angeles and wherever everybody else is. This has been so informative. I'm excited. I hope everyone else is excited. The future's looking bright, and it'll look bright as we remember the past. So hopefully we look forward to sharing more experiences with you and the museum in the future.